And they're off. Here we go.
So it's Matt here, and before we crack into this live show that we did at Scenic World the night before the Firies Climb for MND on the Furber Stairs, I just want to issue a correction. Ali and I referred to Mr. Gavin Clifton as a volunteer firefighter. Now, I understand that is incorrect. He is an on-call firefighter, so he's paid. He's not a full-time firefighter, but he's on call, he's on a pager, and when he gets paged, or when he's on call, he is paid. He is not a volunteer firefighter, and I would like to apologise to Gavin for introducing him incorrectly. Welcome everyone to Scenic World. My name is Matt Raymond.
And I am Ali Pottinger, and thank you so much for coming out tonight to the rooftop bar at Scenic World in the Blue Mountains for this very special evening. This country is absolutely beautiful, and it's always an honour to be on Gundungurra country.
And we are here tonight because of a pernicious and incurable group of neurodegenerative disorders that fall under the umbrella of MND or motor neuron disease, and more than 2,300 people in Australia are thought to be living with MND at any one time.
And we know just because something is incurable at the moment doesn't mean we shouldn't be striving for a cure. Conducting research into the condition or working to advocate for those who are affected by MND and their families, raising awareness in whatever way we can.
And I guess that's why we are really here tonight, is to raise awareness in whatever way we can, and which is the New South Wales Fire and Rescue 2024 Firies Climb for MND, whereby a bunch of intrepid souls will climb the Furber Stairs for 24 hours to raise awareness and money for MND Australia. Hands up.
Good on you, team. This weekend, fundraising for MND had a real draw for me. Personally, my family's life has been impacted by something that's currently incurable, and one thing that brings comfort is knowing that people recognise how tough and unfair it is, that they see you and support you and are striving towards making life better. How powerful this weekend is to have that happening in a physical and emotional cohesion, with people progressing up and down Furber Stairs, striving for progress for a cure for MND. So a big thank you to everyone in the room for also being part of that collective push.
Look, Ali, let's get into the nitty-gritty, because we all know about stair climbs and stuff like that, but like, you are someone, out of the three people from Aotearoa in the room, you have probably the most probably most accumulated time in the Blue Mountains. What are some of the stats of the Furber Stairs?
Yeah, so our local stair climber, Rob Mann, he's over there, he went out yesterday, and on Furber there are 963 stairs up in total, of which 6 are optional. There you go, team. And 113 are well-locked steel staircases, 9 flights, 32 down for a total of 995 steps.
It's no joke. No, it's no joke at all. It's a mighty achievement. How many times would you say you've done the Furber Stairs?
I don't even know. I don't know. Maybe,
more than 10?
Yeah, more than 10. Yeah, definitely more than 10.
Right, like, rather we could be here sort of nerding out about trail running stats all night, but we've got a wonderful guest lineup of guests tonight, so we should crack on and we'll get them up one at a time. So first, please welcome to the stage Matt Pridham.
So Matt, he has been a dedicated firefighter with Fire and Rescue New South Wales for 14 years. In 2015, Matt, Adam Regal and Megan Pope from I always say this wrong, Macquarie University, co-founded the Firies Climb for motor neuron disease, an event that quickly gained momentum. Over 4 years, nearly 2,000 firefighters from across Australia and beyond climbed the Sydney Tower Eye, raising more than $3 million for MND research at Macquarie University rather than treatment, a cause close to his heart.
So Matt, you're the original stair climb organiser. What drew you to stair climbing as a competitive endeavour?
To be fair, I really despise stair climbing in general.
You're in the wrong job then, are you really?
Yeah. And I despise it even more when I'm in turnout gear and have to climb stairs. But it seemed, I think we'd just done a drill at Sydney Tower, and we were climbing up the stairs, and one of my really good mates, Adam, had just been diagnosed with MND, and I thought we could get a bunch of fireys together and run up this thing and see if we can raise money. So I put it out to my immediate friends, which was about 6 people and on shift, said, do you guys want to do this with me? And they're like, yeah, we should get other people too. And then, that year, I think 175 people joined up to do it. And it raised 180 grand, I think, in the first year. So I was just blown away. And that was really my introduction into stair climbing. And it was nothing to do with the enjoyment of climbing stairs at all. And clarify, I still don't like them now.
I've got a supplementary question. When you say turnout gear, I mean, I've got a bunch of firefighters. He was actually wondering what the collective noun for a group of firefighters is. Is there one?
A murder of firefighters, a flock.
I said a smoke show. I said a smoke show.
I went with calendar.
Matt went for a calendar.
So, calendar. But anyway, a group
Calendar
of firefighters. For those of us in the room not of the firefighting fraternity and sorority, what is turnout gear?
Turnout gear is the overwear that we wear, like personal protective equipment that we wear into a fire. So It's a turnout jacket that goes over your normal duty wear, and then turnout pants and boots, helmet, flash hood, gloves, and an air cylinder so we can breathe in the fire. It's all up, weighs between 20 and 25 kilos. And it is brutally hot to do exercise in because it's got this moisture barrier in it which doesn't let heat escape at all. So you just kind of you turn into a roast dinner, basically. Yeah.
Probably useful for fighting fires to have a moisture barrier.
Yeah. But definitely not so good for exercising in. Climbing stairs.
So, Matt, you've got a long history of being involved with the climb. What have been the most heartening things that you have experienced through your involvement?
That is a easy and very difficult question to answer. There's so many experiences of absolute best versions of humans you can imagine. The one that sticks out in my brain the most is this 4-year-old kid who came up to me in Pitt Street Mall with a little tin, and he had a little firefighter's outfit on. And he opened this tin up and there was $14 inside it. And he said, I've been saving my pocket money so I can give it to the people who are sick. And I was just crying. And he goes, I can get more next year. I was like, mate, you have done a lot already. Just the thing that sticks out in my mind more generally is when you do something and people seem to believe that it's from a really good place, that seems to be really, really infectious. And it took me a long time to get over not owing people for their contribution to making the climb work. And it was pointed out to me at some stage that people are doing it because they want to, because they're caught up in it, because they think it's a positive thing to be involved with, because it actually gives them something. And that was something that I was just so passionate about fixing it myself that I just was blown away by other people getting caught up in that and being kind of so inspired by it as well. And that was probably the most impactful thing for me.
Matt, tell us about your mate Adam, and how did MND, how it touched your life?
Adam and I grew up together, and he was one of my best mates. We both did apprenticeships together, and his dad got his uncle died of MND, and we all thought that was really bad because we'd heard that he got this disease and went downhill really quickly and then died. And then a year later his dad got diagnosed, and then it got real. And then I think we kind of suspect that maybe the trauma of his dad dying kind of might have unearthed that in Adam. And then not long after his dad died, Adam got diagnosed, and he was 30 years old, had a young family, 2 young kids, and it was just horrible to see him go through the degeneration that takes over. And we all knew, all of his mates knew that statistically, 18 months, 50% of people are gone. And he was our best mate at 30 years old. We're thinking at 31 years old, he might be dead. And anyway, he was an absolute champion bloke. Anyone that met him, anyone that knows him will tell you he was an absolute champion of a bloke. And funny as hell, real good sense of humour. And so he was the inspiration. And honestly, he was the one that inspired so many other people to get involved with it. And without him, it definitely would not have become what it did become, what it has become, what it's continued to be now, and it's starting to evolve, it is all part of his legacy, and he was extremely proud of that as well, I know. But very humble, very, very humble.
Sorry, I've lost my page. What do you have a goal for tomorrow? Distance or time or
survival? No, I was telling you earlier, Ali, that I haven't climbed stairs since 2018. I haven't really done any structured physical activity since then either. So I'll be keeping a close eye on defib locations, I think. If I can make it up and down 5 times, I'll be really happy.
Ooh,
yeah.
That's quite a big goal there, Matt, for someone who's shoes...
Did I say 5? I meant 2, sorry. Yeah.
And I know you've put it out there now. And it's pretty solid for someone who just said that his shoes were covered in termite mounds.
Yeah, they were.
That's how little they've been used.
I had to chisel the termites off them, yeah.
So having done, we spoke before back where we were staying, and you've done the Furber stairs before, not in turnout gear, and you won't be doing it in turnout gear tomorrow, but you haven't run up them, you've walked them on day trips, and versing some of the tower climbs you've done. Which one do you think is going to be harder?
I don't know. I think that the Furber stairs with the varying heights in stairs and, a bit of wear and tear on them and stuff, I think that's probably going to be pretty tricky. But doing 1,500 stairs in turnout gear in a column that's not ventilated at all in Sydney Tower was pretty putrid, yeah. You definitely ingesting a lot of other people's sweat. And I think I'll take the fresh air of the Blue Mountains any day.
Having stood on the finish line of a bunch of ultramarathons, you are ingesting other people's sweat, eh? That's the bit, at least it's not so contained. You'd be glad of the respirator.
Oh yeah, well we didn't use, we never used we never had the masks on in the tower. We just couldn't make it work for the event. Even though a lot of other stair climbs around the world do that, and it's brutal. It's very, very... It's the most physically demanding thing I've ever done is to climb a tower on air. But yeah, from a risk management perspective, I could never cop that in the Sydney Tower. Couldn't sleep.
All right, Matt. Well, look, thank you for sharing your story with us and Adam's story with us. And, we're very, very excited. This will go out to a lot of people. And where can people, if they want to donate, if they want to get involved, where can they do that?
Yeah, just Google Firies Climb for MND and you'll see Gav's picture on there. And, just give whatever you can. It's amazing what it adds up to when a lot of people give a tiny amount. It is better for more people to give less than less people to give more, because each one of those people becomes a mini ambassador for what we're trying to achieve. And if you can just include anywhere in anything that you talk about with MND, the strike rate of how quickly it takes people, 50% of patients, 18 months. Just spread the word for us. That's just as important. So please donate and talk about it.
Cool. Big round of applause for Matt.
Thanks very much.
Right, well, look, I'll welcome up our next guest, Professor Dominic Rowe. Now, I've pared this bio back somewhat because you got a lot going on. Professor Rowe is Foundation Professor of Neurology in the Faculty of Medicine and Health Science at Macquarie University, Chairman of Macquarie Neurology and Consultant Neurologist at Macquarie University Hospital. For 10 years, he was Chairman of the MND Research Institute of Australia, taking this funding body from minor influence to the major source of funding for MND research in Australia. Please, big round of applause, Professor Dominic Rowe.
Hello. I'm really quite nice.
It didn't say anything in your bio about being not nice.
Yeah, that sounds scary.
Dominic, for those in the room who don't understand, can you tell us about what MND is?
Sure. So motor neurone disease is common. It's not rare. It's 1 in 200 people at the moment in Australia. It killed more people in 2020 than COVID. It kills as many people in New South Wales as people who die in fatal road traffic accidents. So often people start with the sentence, MND is a rare problem. Bull. Motor neuron disease attacks 2 very special groups of cells in your brain and spinal cord. So up in your brain, you've got these very special cells called BET cells, and they enable you to do fine anti-gravity movement. So doing up buttons, writing, playing the piano, guitar, whatever, anything that you want to do that's anti-gravity, these very special cells up here do that seamlessly. Down in your spinal cord, you've got these other special cells called anterior horn cells, and they send long messages out to talk to your muscles, and your muscles basically work like hydraulic pistons, and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times a day, you seamlessly move your muscles. So what motor neurone disease is that it attacks those cells. So if it attacks those cells in your spinal cord, you can't use chopsticks or do a button up, or you can't get your fly open to have a pee. If it affects the cells in your spinal cord, you might trip on a crack that's not there in the pavement, or you can't walk on the sand. Or like one of my patients, Bill, his first symptom was he couldn't stand on his surfboard. He just kept on falling off, and he'd surfed for 40 years. If it affects the cells in the base of your brain, you might have trouble with your speech, sounding like you've been into the cooking sherry when really you're as straight as an arrow. So you might have slurred speech, and that might be worse at the end of the day. So it can affect different people differently depending on where the cells that are first involved are affected. So motor neurone disease starts in one part of your nervous system and then spreads, like fire in a coal seam. And just like fire in a coal seam, this disease is incredibly difficult to control. Some motor neurone disease, like Adam's, was genetic. So he, from his dad, inherited a faulty gene, and that gene switched on. So in his dad, it switched on when he was in his 50s, but with Adam, it switched on in his 30s. And we don't know why this gene called SOD1, damages motor neurons. And we don't know why it switches on in some people earlier and in some people later. That's one of the things that we try and work on. We now, too late for Adam, have a therapy that suppresses this faulty gene. And we have numerous patients at Macquarie, and we're the only site in Australia that gives this gene therapy to suppress this faulty gene called SOD1, so that people with SOD1 motor neuron disease, their survival is 4, 5, 6, 10 times their natural untreated survival. So instead of 18 months, we have patients out now at 4, 5 years where they should have passed their use-by date 3, 4 years ago. I never thought I'd see that in my career, but the practical input of the Firies Climb for MND is that we can do that at Macquarie. So since we last spoke, there have been 2 major leaps forward in treatment of motor neuron disease, both, at least in part, attributable to the efforts that you guys started in 2015. So 10% of motor neuron disease, you see, you shouldn't give the bald little fat guy the mic. He takes over the room. 10% of motor neuron disease is genetic, but the 900-pound gorilla in the room is sporadic motor neuron disease, the one that comes out of the blue. So this afternoon I saw a 56-year-old professor of veterinary science who flew down from Cairns to see me, and he has sporadic motor neuron disease. And his sporadic motor neuron disease started at the end of 2022, so not that long ago, 20 months ago. Today, he can't talk. He can't swallow his own spit. He can't stand. He can't use his hands. He has trouble breathing. And the likelihood is that he won't be alive by Christmas. So the end of 2022, he was patting himself on the back because he'd shed 10 kilos and was running 10 Ks a day, and then suddenly he started getting symptoms. So this disease respects no one. We strongly suspect that this is environmental. We have very good data, and many other teams around the world suggest that this is environmental. And we need to work out that environmental cause so that we can prevent this disease. When I started working as a doctor years ago, it was 1 in 500. It's now 1 in 200. So if it's gone from 1 in 500 to 1 in 200, we can roll that back to 1 in 500. But we need to do that with good science. And science costs money. Long-winded answer.
I think it's the appropriately winded answer for such a complex problem. I mean, you talked about Adam with the genetic form of MND. Those environmental factors for sporadic MND, I mean, what is there in an elevator pitch easy answer for what you feel is influencing or predisposing groups of people to the sporadic MND?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we were the first group in the world that published genetic susceptibility to sporadic motor neuron disease. Now, we don't understand the mechanism of that, but us working with a team around the world, so we all work together. There's only probably about 3,000 people who work on this disease seriously from a medical and scientific viewpoint around the world. And so there has to be genetic susceptibility, but then the environmental factors are quite complex because before you become weak with motor neuron disease, the disease starts at least 2 to 5 years before your first symptom. And then the trigger to that occurs conceivably 5 years before that. So trying to work out the exposure to what causes this disease can be quite tricky. Now, just because it's tricky doesn't mean that we should ignore it. And we have unique opportunity in Australia because some parts of Australia, the population's very static. So we've been funded by the state government to set up a pilot surveillance unit in the Riverina because the Riverina is quite a unique microcosm. in that the population's very stable. There's not much ingress and egress, and the population density is not that high. So in the Riverina, if you're in Griffith and you get motor neuron disease, everyone knows that you've got motor neuron disease in a town of 28,000 people. I've had 2 patients in Wahroonga who lived 5 doors from each other, and they didn't even know each other, let alone that they had motor neuron disease. So in high density population, the disease is invisible. Currently, this disease is not a notifiable disease. One would think that a disease that kills 1 in 200 Australians, on average 2 years from diagnosis, and it is 100% fatal, one would think that the health authorities would be interested in understanding who has it and where they live. But our study that we've just started is the first time a government in Australia has ever funded this sort of research. So to come back to what the environmental causes are. So none of these environmental causes occur in isolation. So if you Google environment and motor neuron disease, you'll see one of the theories is blue-green algae. So blue-green algal blooms, first of all, it's not necessarily blue. It can be red. And it's not algae. They're bacteria. So we call it blue-green algae, but it's not. They're actually bugs called cyanobacteria. And these cyanobacteria propagate in water when water is sick. So when we've polluted our waterways with too many nutrients, when we've destroyed the natural flora with herbicides, and we've destroyed the fish with European carp and pesticides, and we've destroyed the bugs, then we've destroyed the water. And there are many places around the world where living near a body of fresh water that's polluted is a major risk factor for developing motor neuron disease. In Lake Wyangan, which is just outside Griffith, you're not allowed to ski in it, you're not allowed to fish in it, you're not allowed to swim in it. But have a guess what's used as the source of the town's water. So in Australia, we live in a society that believes you turn the tap on, you can drink the water. It may not be ingested, so there's plenty of evidence that suggests that it has to be inhaled. So, I had a patient in Tumut, a young carpenter, and I asked people about their recreation and where they lived and all that sort of stuff, looking for clues. And this young lad said to me, I said to him, did you grew up in Tumut? I said, did you spend much time in the river? And he said, every weekend. What did you do? Water ski. So farmers know not to let their cattle drink algal contaminated water. We shouldn't be swimming in it. We shouldn't be skiing in it. We should be doing something about it. My point about blue-green algae is that blue-green algae only exists because we've used lots of other chemicals in our internal waterways that may be contributory. These chemicals are designed to kill cells. That's what they do. Fungicides, herbicides, pesticides, neonics, synthetic pyrethroids. They kill bugs by killing their motor neurons. We've dumped millions of kilograms of these chemicals without any regulation, some of which, like PFAS, never break down, and they accumulate through the food chain into us. Why is that important? Well, potentially this is preventable, and it may be simple, that prevention. But in addition, these chemicals and the causes and triggers may lead to understanding the mechanism of why these motor neurons get sick. So coming back to Adam, we now have a gene therapy that suppresses the SOD1 so that I have a patient who's distantly related to Adam who went home from hospital this morning, and she's 4 years past her use-by date. Now, I didn't have that therapy for Adam. I wish to God I did. But we need other therapies that we can use in everyone with motor neuron disease. So it's often asked of me, are we ever going to have a cure for motor neuron disease? And I answered that by saying, well, my concept of a cure is that, so even the lad that I saw today, this professor who flew down from Cairns, if I had a pill that could stop his motor neuron disease today, he'll have more time with his kids. That's all he wants. So if we can put the brakes on this disease, we can buy time for people. Even if they're disabled, like the lad that I saw this afternoon who was very disabled, if I could say to him, we'll put the brakes on, he'd be over the moon. Motor neuron disease is not incurable. It's underfunded. Now, in Australia, we actually have picked up our game dramatically in funding diseases like motor neuron disease and other rare diseases. But it's not good enough. It's not good enough until we have tools that enable this disease to be beaten senseless and rendered inert. Until we put that fire in the coal seam out, I continue to hold the hands of 32-year-old fathers as they draw their last breath, or 38-year-old mums. I manage the deaths of 50 people a year. I want that to stop. With your help, with funding, we can do that. And people often say, well, what's the point of the money? Where does it go? Well, we have two practical outputs of the Firies Climb for MND. We now have a genomic therapy for one form of genetic motor neuron disease. And in addition, the Firies Climb solely was the source of funding for a novel therapy that we think is appropriate to sporadic motor neuron disease called 3K3A-APC. And on the night that the first person in the world ever got a dose of that medicine at Macquarie Hospital, I texted that lad and I said, you should be proud because what you did that. And we're not yet at the finishing line with 3K3A-APC. We're still sourcing funding so that we can show and demonstrate its effectiveness. But that together with other therapies, and it may well be like cancer chemotherapy, we have multiple checkpoints that we have to aim at so that we keep these cells alive and strengthen the connections of the cells that are still there. So we currently have a trial going on at Macquarie called SPG 302. The name doesn't really matter, but it's aimed at trying to slow the progression of motor neuron disease by strengthening the neurons that are still there. So, you know, to all of the people who've climbed since 2015 and all of you guys who are going to, and girls who are going to bust your asses tomorrow, thank you from the bottom of my heart. My boss at Macquarie several years ago said to me, why do you spend so much time doing fundraising? And I thought to myself, what a stupid question. Seriously? But I didn't. I looked at him like, you f***ing idiot. But I didn't say that because it's not a good career move telling your boss he's a f***ing idiot. You might think it. And I said, philanthropic money. So our motor neuron disease centre that's 11 years old now has 80 staff. It's about $12 to $13 million a year to run. We're one of the most effective MND research centres and clinics in the world. And that's from a standing start. That's what philanthropy does. So government money always comes with strings attached. And you always have low-level bureaucrats riding your ass on compliance reports and all that sort of stuff, whereas philanthropic money gives us clean air. And, you know, Maddie was talking before about the tin with $14 in, you know, a couple of years ago because of Hadley. So Hadley's been a very vocal supporter of us, you know, love him or not. A couple of years ago, I got this letter that came through the post and a little note, and it was this chap from Caboolture, and it was a $5 note. And he said, "Dear Professor Rowe, I was listening to you talk on Ray this morning. It's all I've got, but hopefully it helps." And what Matt said before is that little bits. So our motor neuron disease effort at Macquarie, we are 70% of the donations that come to Macquarie Uni come to us. And that gives us a lot of muscle and grunt to do not only boots on the ground work to change the disease, but also blue sky work, giving young scientists money, space and time to follow their nose is a sure recipe for success. And I do need to thank you, Gavin, for asking me up here. And don't laugh at me too much tomorrow if I have to be carried out of the bottom of the further steps.
You've answered two things. You're the first neurologist I've ever heard swear. That's pretty hot. You've answered...
Hang around with me, I'll teach you a few words you've never heard before.
I've been a psychiatric nurse for 25 years. I'll do your competition. But just finally, I mean, your authenticity, your rigour, your anger, and I think it's righteous, is evident. Your passion, your love is evident. What propelled you towards researching MND? Where was the starting point for you?
If one had any sort of sense of self-care, one would not work in motor neuron disease.
Yeah.
But again, I've said many times before, you don't pick motor neuron disease, it picks you. So when I was doing very early in my medical course, I did a year of honours in biochemistry, and it was sort of like a light bulb moment. I know that sounds stupid, but it was a phenomenal year where my instructors and my mentor showed me that textbooks aren't necessarily correct. So you got to go from first principles and work things out. And so don't believe what's told you from the pulpit. Ask people to show you the evidence. So I did my finished medical degree and did training in internal medicine and decided that I was going to do neurology, much to my father's chagrin. And because he said to me, he said, "Neurology?" He said, "Jesus," he said, "that's therapeutically impotent." He was a tough man. And I had sought out one of my mentors, who's still a mentor today, a guy called Stan Appel, who works in Baylor. And I worked in his lab for 2 years after I'd finished my laboratory training. And he didn't care about anything else other than fixing motor neuron disease. So he was absolutely focused on the biology of this disease, because if we understand the biology about why it happens and how it happens, we can then interrupt the process to allow people to live normal lives. And so that was amazing to watch inside his elbow. So this guy he didn't need to work. Seriously didn't need to work. He was richer than Croesus. But he was driven, and he's still at 88, is still working a 60-hour week on this. So that enthusiasm and passion infects you, it gets under your skin. And when we came back to Australia in 1998, I could see the power of Stan's approach to looking after people. So looking after people well, just doing that doubles their survival. It's not a machine that goes ping. It's not a fancy multi-gazillion dollar infusion. It's just actually being available, being affordable. So at Macquarie, we see people from wherever they come from, no matter what their background is or their means. So we have a fund that actually pays for people to have stuff if they can't afford it, and we buy their equipment, we give it to them, in addition to the NDIS. So that this disease, if this disease doesn't motivate you to try and use your intellect and skill to change it, give up, stay at home, watch Netflix, fuck off, get out of the room.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dominic Rowe.
You probably had other questions for me, but...
You answered every single one of them.
Thank you, Dominic. I tell you what, I've learnt a lot, and my mind is boggling at everything that you've said. Just, yeah, a lot of food for thought there. Next, we would like to welcome up to the stage Jane Simpson of the MND Research Collective Board. Welcome, Jane. Now,
that's a shit act to follow, really, isn't it?
I've got to introduce you, Jane, and there's quite the list here. So Jane spent 20 years working with Australian and global corporations to identify improvement opportunities within their policies and procedures. Jane has been invited to speak at both international and national conferences. Jane started her own business and in 2019 won Xero's Best Small Australian Business. In February of 2021, Jane's husband Robert was diagnosed with MND and he died 10 months later. Since then, Jane has become involved with Fight MND and MND Australia to try and make a difference to those with MND and their carers. Jane is the chair of the MND Research Collective Lived Experience Expert Driving Team and is host of the podcast Let's Talk MND. And reading that, I said to Matt, gosh, Jane just sounds like an absolute weapon.
Okay, thank you.
What
do you want to ask me?
Yeah, so Jane, having lived experience, there must be times that it's really hard to still be involved with MND. What keeps you involved?
It's really hard, actually. I drove from Melbourne to here yesterday, and it was and there's still lots of firsts since my husband died, and we would have normally done that drive together and, you know, winkled out little places and enjoyed ourselves. And it was very hard yesterday driving up here without him. What motivates me is that I don't have a brainiac brain like Dom, but I have a passion to make a difference to people who are suffering at this very second. And the 2 that were diagnosed today and the 2 that will be diagnosed on tomorrow and on Monday. On average, 2 people a day are diagnosed and 2 people a day die. And my husband and I lived in Sydney when he was ill and Dom was our doctor. And we were lucky in that we had best practice with Dom and his team. But I see around the country that many others don't have best practice, that many people live alone, they're not applicable for the NDIS, they're on aged care, and the benefits for that are terrible. And I'm a fairly passionate human being. I'm a bit of a weapon, and if I can see that there's a place that I can make a change, I will make a change. But yeah, it is tough because when you live in this world of MND, you make really close friendships with people and you know that you're going to lose them. Mm. You know that they're going to die. And that's really tough. Yeah.
Having gone through that loss, what do you say? I mean, how do you find it in yourself? How do you find it to have those conversations with people, with family members who are walking that path that you've walked, walking that path with their loved ones? What do you say what do those people need?
I can't make anything better. That's Dom's job. But I can be empathetic, and I'm a kind of a non-bullshit type person. So I let people know to the best of my ability from my own journey and from the people that are around me every day now, how it's going to be. Robert started out, it's your fault, we were in New Zealand and he had a fall. I didn't recover as we expected him to fall when we were skiing. And it was the little things. He couldn't do up his buttons. He couldn't do up his zipper, all those little things that happen. But then I know I have other friends who, within a couple of months, totally cannot talk anymore. But my answer to that question is that I'm honest, because the person is going to die, and so there's no point bullshitting anybody when you've got someone in your family who's going to die. Yeah. It's shit, actually. My husband didn't make the 27-month or the 18-month mark. He made 10 months. And, that's a pretty speedy journey. But what's is it 8 weeks or 3 months?
8 weeks.
8 weeks. Dom's shortest one is. But then I do know someone who's had it for 35 years. I know quite a lot of people who've had it for 10 or 11 or 12 years. But, yeah. We used to listen to Dom on Ray Hadley's show some mornings, and this nice man will come on the radio and he'd talk about MND, and Robert and I would tut-tut and throw some money at him, and that was it, and that had a lot of people the same thing. James jokingly said to me before, "Mate, I don't even know how to spell MND." And I know that was a joke, but there are people out there who don't know how to spell MND. They have no understanding what it is at all. And it's not a rare disease, as Dom said before as well. You want me?
I'm sure we both want you, Jane.
You're human.
As someone who has experienced a loved one going through MND, what would you like to say to people who are here and supporting?
When you all walked in before, made me a little bit teary, and I'm a bit worried about how I'm going to be tomorrow, because the mere fact that you've all turned up here tonight is phenomenal. And the amount of people who are going to turn up tomorrow and the next day. And we need money bad, as Dom has said. We really do need money. But then what Maddie said as well is we need more and more people to understand, to know what MND is. We need more people to have more intimate knowledge of what MND is. We see people roll out in their wheelchairs or do the miraculous walks, but behind closed doors, it's the toughest illness. It is the toughest illness to care for someone as well, despite the fact that you are going to die. The person is going to die. For the family also, it's soul-crushing and it's life-changing. We need more people to know about it. Spread the word.
On the topic of sort of spreading the word, and, not that I'm advocating people being unfaithful to Dirt Church Radio, but I understand you also have a podcast. My first question is, whatever possessed you to start a podcast?
It's a really good question, actually. What possessed me is that when people are diagnosed with MND, you're very alone. You're very scared. You're very often, if it's sporadic, which my husband's was, don't know anybody else with MND. And we have 2,300 people in the country at the moment with MND. Another 2 tomorrow, another 2 the next day, another 2 the next day. All of those people with MND have families and they have friends, and they are alone and scared and terrified, and I wanted to build a community of people. And I've done that, and it's quite extraordinary, the feedback that I get from people. Nearly at 10,000 downloads, which for less than a year and for a small community is a lot. Professor Rowe came on for, what did we have, half an hour scheduled, and an hour and a half later you left me. But besides from building the community, we're actually making change as well, making changes within the community, which is extremely important. They can listen to me and you know. In fact, I'm going to ask permission for your podcast to be on my podcast, so, you know,
We'll come
spreading the love.
Yeah, we'll come on anytime. Absolutely. I mean, I got to say, it's that thing, isn't it? Is there an end point to advocacy? What do we see as like an ideal future state? I mean, nothing's ever perfect, right? And existing within the health system, different countries, but working within the health system, they're less than perfect. People come to work generally with the desire to do an okay job, and through systems and bureaucracy and what have you, and our own foibles and prejudice, oftentimes we don't deliver the care that is deserved of people, especially for something as unknown. I'm using air quotes there, as MND or niche or whatever you would say. What is a sort of what's your realistic utopia?
Oh, that I'm never needed ever again. That I don't have to talk about MND to anybody. I don't have to think about MND. That's my utopia. I'm sure that's Dom's utopia too. Just, you know, sign off and go and live on the farm. But whilst it's this, as far as I'm concerned, and people that I deal with, they're on more and more trials, which is amazing. It's not as hopeless as it felt to be before, that there is hope now. Yeah, utopia is, I don't know, travel all the time.
Realistic utopia. That's the thing, though, right? Like, no. I mean, but yeah, of course. That's
realistic. That's a really hard question that I can't answer. Yeah.
I guess this is a start, though, right?
Oh my God, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Jane, it's been a real pleasure having you up here, and thank you. I think it's incredibly brave of you sharing your story and making that journey, sadly, alone. But we're all here with you and really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
Right. Last, but by no means least, we would like to invite to the stage someone who is the driving force behind the Firies Climb for MND. Gavin Clifton is a Blue Mountains local, Fire and Rescue Australia volunteer, firefighter, and he has multiple 100k and 50k ultramarathon finishes under his belt. He also totally threw us under the bus this afternoon with a surprise.
He threw us on top of the bus.
On top of the bus?
If you mean the bus, the small steel box hanging over 1,000 feet of empty air and certain death. We got up on top of the Skyway today, which was a singular experience. Hey?
Yes.
Incredible.
But we actually loved it.
And I think it's typical of Gavin. I think it's typical of Gavin's generosity and Gavin's that the word authenticity is bandied around, it's beaten to death most times, but Gavin's the same sitting here as he is at 2 a.m. when he's giving me a hug when he's just finished the UTA 100 and he's coming to check on me to make sure I'm okay because I've been up standing on the mic for a long time. Gavin's the same when he's ringing us in New Zealand to invite us to come to the Blue Mountains to be a part of this, and suggesting that he would like to make our time as comfortable as possible, and something that we would gladly pay to do, and just the passion for such a brutal challenge, to climb the further stairs And he was so very excited about it, and so, the enormity of the challenge. And for those who know me, I get excited about stuff too. And Gavin said to me on a podcast, and Rebecca, you haven't heard this, he said, if I can get someone to donate $10,000 to the Furber Stair challenge, will you do it? Will you climb the stairs for 24 hours? I said, yeah, hell yeah, I will, man. Absolutely, 100%. Ended the podcast and then just thought, what have I done? I had nightmares that night. I had nightmares that I was sliding down an ice sheet with this. Do you know who Conrad Langridge is? It's a bit of a niche news. Yeah, with Conrad Langridge, and I sliding down an ice sheet to certain death. And I actually rang him the next morning and said, I can't do it, mate. I can't. That the enormity of that challenge just felt overwhelming. But you and others are going to take that up. And so, come up and have a yarn. And ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. I turned it back on.
Wow.
Gavin, tell us, what was the first time that you ever set foot on Furber Stairs?
That would have been UTA 22 2019, which was actually my first true and real competitive trail race, and I'd never ever done anything like this before. I'd been a runner as a kid. Life got in the way, as it does, youth and latter years and work and distractions, and sort of stopped. And then 2019, how old was I then? I'm 54 now, so whatever that was back then. Thought I'd have a crack at the UTA 22, train for it, and came in at a reasonable 2 hour, 40-minute time for my first crack at it. So I thought I might have a go at this.
That's really impressive.
It's tidy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and then so that was my first trail run, and then from there it's sort of I guess the addiction kicks in, as it does, as you both know. What if I do a 50, or what if I do a 60, and then before you know it, you're doing triple figure races, and people are challenging you to bigger and better things, and you meet people who you want to go out and run with, and who encourage you and push you and motivate you, and you end up being motivated by them, and you push each other, and before you do it, you're coming up with crazy concepts and ideas for certain things. So here we are.
On the topic of crazy, I mean, Furber Stairs suck. They really do suck. They're terrible. No one enjoys them. Enjoy is a funny word, isn't it? But you endure them. You feel some sense of mastery. But to do it for 24 hours, what are you most looking forward to, and what do you think you're most challenged by?
I don't quite know how to answer that, Matt, because it doesn't make sense. A lot of it doesn't make sense. I guess probably for me, the biggest thing about looking forward to this on a personal level is probably sharing the experience with other people. And there's something quite unique. Last year, there was a whole heap of us that did it for 18 hours, as you'd be well aware. And the year before, we did it for 12 hours. And it's been wonderful to see this grow, and the camaraderie that is formed out there at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, at 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning, when you've been going. And the up, down, you get down to the bottom. Do we have to do it again? Yeah, we do. We've got to do it again. At 3 o'clock in the morning, people are coming up with ideas of, why don't we do a little bit longer again next year? Why don't we push it out further? So I don't know whether it's... I don't. That's sort of what you say. It literally doesn't make sense. There is no rationale to it. But that's just been one of the wonderful things that's come out of this, and I guess the camaraderie with the other runners, the walkers, whoever it is, and the awareness that we create. Such a silly idea 5 years ago. When I first did it by myself, I did it for 3.5 hours. I think I did 6 laps, and there was a newspaper article that said, if someone was to pay me $500, I'd do it a 7th time. So that was in 2020, the first year we did it. Here we are now. Somebody suggested to me last year, why don't you do it for 24 hours? And I said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Let's have a go. So here we are, and it's starting to reconnect the fire rescue community, which for me has been a wonderful affirmation of what we're doing. People are coming out of the woodwork again and getting involved. So that's, I guess if a shortish, longish sort of answer to that question, if that sort of does the job.
Gavin, what does raising money for MND mean to you? And, because we had a quick chat on the phone about it, but I'd love to hear more about it now. And also to kind of copy the earlier question from Matt and say, what heartening moments have you had in your time as an organiser?
To answer your first question, Ali, for me, it was, I remember when COVID put the kibosh on the tower climb effectively, it knocked it on the head. And I've said this a couple of times, and there were a few of us that felt this, like all the momentum that had been gained over those 4 years from 2015 from Matt and his crew and, bringing that community together. All that momentum that had been gained it just stopped. It literally just stopped. And there are a lot of us who, I'd only climbed the tower 3 times. There are a lot of us that, it was something you wanted to be a part of. It was something you wanted to get there, and it was a competition to see who could raise the most money, and push yourselves to do that. And I remember 2019, it just stopped, and it was like, wow. And we literally sat around one time at our fire station and we said, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? And then it was enter Macquarie University the next year. They came up with the idea of doing your own virtual climb, hence my 7 times on the Furber Stairs. And I remember feeling sort of helpless, probably isn't the right word, but sort of feeling like my contribution was so much less to what had been achieved the years before, which I know isn't the case, but it was like, how can we fix this? How can we increase this? How can we do something with this? And I just got this idea that we might be able to build a little event up here in the Blue Mountains. I knew that the community's strong up here and super supportive, and we all back each other and get involved with each other, and I guess that's been my personal drive to try and use that vision, and I guess use that motivation and that drive from what we did used to enjoy being a part of and contributing to in the privileged position of being a firefighter for New South Wales, is to continue something and start building something again. So to see it, for me personally, on the fundraising side of it, to see it, I think at the end of last year, the little mountains climbs that we've been doing, we raised just over $75,000. And as I sit here right now, this year's campaign alone, before we even start climbing, has raised just short of $45,000, which dead set blows me away and just inspires me and motivates me to do even more next year. And, I haven't even climbed tomorrow and I'm thinking about next year already. So it's the brain just never stops.
I'm scared to see what next year's hourly climb's going to be. Is it the whole weekend?
I've got more surprises for you too.
Next year or tomorrow?
Tomorrow and next year, yeah.
Right, I can't wait. Today's surprise was so awesome.
But yeah, so if that sort of answers that question, it was, and to want to continue that and to want to continue that legacy, and that, I never got to meet Adam. But Adam was somebody that we all knew. He was your drive. He was the reason that you wanted to do it. And then getting up to the top of the tower and starting at the bottom of the tower, you were greeted by MND sufferers, and they would embrace you and thank you for your efforts and what you've done. And then when you got to the top, and as Matt had explained before, it's so hot. It is just in that turnout gear, it's revolting. And you've got people peeling your helmets off and peeling your turnout gear off and getting electrolytes and getting water into your system. And, the MND sufferers would you just covered in sweat, and they'd give you a cuddle and kiss you on the cheek, and they'd be wiping your brow, and you're thinking, you're doing this for me? You know, you're doing this for me. You got it the wrong way around. You don't have to do that. I'm doing this for you. And it was, and that really stuck with me, I guess. That was probably the strongest message that, you know, that never left me ever. And then when the tower climb stopped, it was a hollow feeling. What's going to happen to all these people? What's going to happen? So a crazy notion and a crazy idea. You know, hopefully we kick off the next 10 years of it. You know, it's 10 years for Firies Climb next year. You know, so we're sort of planning some more things for next year, but hopefully we continue to grow this and build it, and awareness is the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing, is just getting the awareness out there, I guess, and it doesn't matter how you do it, let's just get it out there.
I think it's so right what you say, you know, Gavin, you talk about that notion of privilege, and you talk about, and this is a privilege that we have, and I'm sure if you asked anyone suffering with MND or anyone's family if they'd rather trade places with you than have MND, you know, I'm sure that all of them would trade places in a heartbeat. But there's no shame and I'm sure that anyone who's suffering from MND would not begrudge anyone the freedom to move, the freedom to advocate, the freedom to, and the privilege to engage in this challenge. Look, I just want to again express, I've had a day of first. It's been a long day. It's been a long day for us, Ali and Rebecca, you know, coming from New Zealand. The timing difference, and your wildlife's frightening, and then, you know, your roads are too narrow, whatever. But it's been a day of firsts. But it's also been a day of first being in a room with such singular people and such commitment and such passion and such authenticity. So please, everyone, put your hands together. Very, very warm round of applause for Matt Pridham. Come on, we can give more applause than that. Professor Dominic Rowe, Jane Simpson, and Gavin Clifton.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Should we leave it? I mean, we've gone over time. It's getting a bit late. I would just ask quickly, though, if anyone has a question for the panel that they'd like to ask, we can grab a mic.
Yep.
What stops MND from being like any other deadly disease? Why is MND specifically like so common?
Well, it's a sort of a little bit like when you get a new car. So when you get a new car, you think, oh, no one else has this car. And then you go, oh, there's one. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. And suddenly everyone's got the same car that you have. So you don't see it until you look for it. So why is this the worst disease? Well, in my opinion, it's the worst disease because it robs you of your ability to talk, to swallow, to move, to breathe. It robs you of communication, although we get around that a little bit. And it respects no one. So, and if you were to, like an evil scientist, like the brain, trying to think up the worst disease that you could possibly think of, this would be it. So, and my heart goes out and I understand the people who've been through. So I often say that motor neuron disease is like a crucible. It's a unique form of torture, and it's a torture that affects not just the person who has motor neuron disease, but for every person who has it, there's 10 people affected at least. So Adam, we talked about, but Kylie, his wife, and AJ, his son, and Ciara. Oh, it's Ciara now, 10, 27, 15. Fuck me. So I grow up with these families and I meet them, and it never leaves them. This disease never leaves them, ever. So a couple of years ago, took my kids to see a concert in at the city at a place called The Basement, and we were seeing this band from New Orleans called Tuba Skinny, really ultra cool. Not. And there's this great big hipster dude checking me out. Thinking, I'm here with my kids, just leave me alone. I'm on a night out, and this guy's looking at me. He's a big guy, 6'4", big bushy beard. And he came over to me and he said, "Professor Rowe," because I wasn't wearing normally I wear a bow tie, and when I take it off, no one recognises me because I'm not wearing a bow tie. Anyhow, he came up to me and he said, "Professor Rowe," and I said, "Yes." He said, "You won't remember me, my name's Matthew." He said, "You looked after my dad, Peter." And I remembered his dad, and I remembered Matthew, which was 10 years before his dad died. And he's now 26. And he's this huge bear of a man. I said, "Matt, good to see you, lad. You've grown a little bit since I saw you last." He said, "I want to thank you for how you looked after me and my dad when my dad was dying." And I said, "Matty, it was an honour." He said, "Can I give you a hug?" I said, "Of course you can." So he gave me this big hug. So this is a disease that we need to see the back of it. So we talked about genetic motor neurone disease with Adam. Well, we now provide IVF support for young families who might have these faulty genes so the genes don't get passed on. So we have 3 little babies born to our clinic who don't have the faulty genes. So that's in essence a cure. But we need to do better. And that if it's just money that enables us to do better, well, we can solve that. Why are we spending $58 billion on tanks in Australia? Hello, we're an island. We don't need tanks. They don't float. You can't put them on a ship. Seriously. So we need to spend money on things that matter, and people matter. Is that sort of an answer? Long-winded, don't give the short ball guy the mic. Just note to self.
Does anyone else have a... Yep. All right.
If we've addressed the 10% that have the genetic disorder, and we're saying 90% is a sporadic disease, and then we can identify that herbicides and pesticides create blue-green algae, and therefore that could be the cause for a sporadic disease. What are the barriers in which we can stop herbicides and pesticides and this blue-green algae spreading in our water?
I'll pay you later. The first algal bloom happened in Lake Kajelico in 1965, first documented algal bloom. So this is not a long-standing phenomenon. We've destroyed our inland waterways. You used to be able to scuba dive in the Murray River and the Darling River. Try that now. You can't. The barrier, and if you look at Water New South Wales, they have a real-time map of algal blooms in our inland waterways. And water at the moment in Australia is a commodity bought and sold by dickheads sitting on their computers in their studies. It shouldn't be. So we can fix this by not putting forever chemicals in our food chain. The APVMA, which sits in Armidale, is the regulatory authority that's responsible for the import licensing and use of these chemicals that are designed to kill cells. The APVMA reports to the Department of Agriculture. In other developed countries, the APVMA or equivalent body reports to the Department of Health. Agribusiness is not interested in making these chemicals unavailable. It's about profit.
In the news today, Menlo Lake, or the water supply here in Blue Mountains, has been closed because of the high levels of PFAS.
PFAS, there we go, PFAS.
But it's still coming out of the tap.
They've shut it down for use as of today because of those levels, and it's been in use today.
So we can, and it's not just Australia that water's a problem. So in northeastern the United States, in the New England area, there's a lake. If you live on the western edge of this lake, you have a 30-fold increased incidence of motor neurone disease than if you live on the other side of the lake. In southern France, near Montpellier, there's a very famous lagoon called the Tor Lagoon. If you live downwind of the Tor Lagoon, within 5 kilometres of the edge of the lake, you have a 5-fold increased incidence of motor neurone disease. We only know those numbers because there's a surveillance of who has motor neurone disease, where they have it, where they lived. Currently, motor neurone disease is not a notifiable disease in Australia. In 2022, it killed 803 Australians. In that same year, silicosis, which is a notifiable disease. So if you get silicosis, the doctor is compelled by law to notify the Department of Health. That's what a notifiable disease means. In 2022, 16 people in Australia died from silicosis, and that's a notifiable disease. Was it just recently? So you would have seen Woz drive his lawnmower from Melbourne to Canberra and met with Albanese because he has motor neuron disease with a petition to make the feds make motor neuron disease a notifiable disease. Was it last week that the petition was turned down? Doesn't meet the regulatory requirements to be a notifiable disease. So if you have a unfortunate Saturday night and end up needing some penicillin because you've picked up an infection, the infection that you've picked up is a notifiable disease. 2 years ago, everyone was up in arms about Mpox, monkeypox. Monkeypox. Ooh, monkeypox. Do you know how many people got monkeypox in Australia in 2022? 80. Questionable Saturday nights as well. Thank you. Pay you later too. So the point is that even though it does cost money to make something a notifiable disease, until we know the scope of the problem and where it is, we can't do anything about identifying the cause, but also, most importantly, we can't do anything about service delivery to people who have motor neuron disease. I currently, I look after 16 people in the Riverina, which is a catchment of 160,000 people with motor neuron disease. Now, that's just one doctor, and that's way too many. But the service provision, so in the Riverina, there's one neurologist, Martin Jude, in Wagga. And he just calls me up, he goes, Dom, got another one. About every couple of weeks, Dom, got another one. Got any room? So I see 2 to 3 new people a week, unfortunately. And that's got to stop. So we can do it. It's going to require effort and, rolling up effort tomorrow, rolling up your sleeves and putting in the effort. And sure, it's hard work, but that's the only way that you see opportunity. If you sit on the couch and watch Netflix, nothing ever happens.
I mean, they could donate though if they're watching Netflix. They could get their phone out and make a donation. We could see some progress, right?
They could.
So if you're one of those, then that's one way to make a change. And if you haven't already, consider supporting the Firies Climb via the QR codes on the posters. We'll look forward to seeing a bunch of you out on the stairs tomorrow, starting from 12.
Yeah, I'm fired up. I mean, we could have another podcast about late stage capitalism, I guess, if you want, but it seems awesome. Let's go send it on the stairs tomorrow. And thank you very much. This podcast is going to come out on Wednesday. Share it around. This is probably this is the most swearing we've ever had on 6 years of Ditch Radio. Thank you, Australia. No. But yeah, so share it around. I mean, we're stoked. Let's get the word out, and look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rigby.